So, testing, 1, 2, 3. We should be live. Let's have a look. Yes, and I believe we are. Guys, please drop a 1 in the chat if you can hear my audio. If you guys get my voice and if everyone else is coming through clearly. So I'm here with Thunderous and with Reason Dances. Welcome, guys.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Lloyd. Hello, Mr. T. Hope everyone's okay, and hope the audience is present and okay too.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me on today, Lloyd. I'm excited to talk about Sharia. Well, maybe not excited to talk about Sharia, but excited to be with you guys anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely. Me too. Welcome to the audience. Let me see. We have Harry Johnson, we have Righteous, Carol B, guy called Reasoned Answers, Marek, Zachar, Villainous, and of course Sergeant Grinch. Welcome. Well, thanks guys for being here. And yeah, so anything from your side? Thunderous, thanks again for joining us. Thaddeus, amazing trailer you did for the upcoming Finding Nemo video. That was really impressive.
Yep, we'll be going live with part 1 in 2 hours from now. So keep this stream under 2 hours.
Yeah, no, I need to finish around, well, in maximum 1 hour. So 45 minutes to 1 hour. That's what I'm aiming at. Yeah, so let's jump in. And hey, the video is working. Thaddeus looks fine. So Rodney Howard, good morning, guys. Okay, yeah, so we ended here last time. We ended on the discussion of the authority of the scholars, right? Which explained exactly from the scholarly perspective how authoritative and how important the scholars actually are. I did mention this little piece here, which shows us, I'll zoom in a bit for those looking on a mobile phone, the world and what is in it is accursed, which is part of the directly Gnostic leanings within Islam, as you can see. Actually, and if I go here, I'm in the Reliance of the Traveler. I've typed in the letters G and OS from the beginning. Right, I've typed in those letters. I'm just going to go next. Well, just going to start searching. Let's see what we find.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
When it says the whole world and everything, the whole world and everything is cursed, in what context are they are suggesting everything's cursed? Are they suggesting everything in creation, the physical realm, is cursed?
That the physical realm is cursed, yeah. Because you'll notice here's the first entry, and you'll find mention of Gnosticism across the Sharia books, whether it's Sunni or Shia, you'll find it there. But the spiritual station of annihilation in Gnostic vision, these are like 12 spiritual stations. That the Sufi. So once you've mastered the Sharia, and then you can obviously become, well, you move over to the spiritual side of Islam. You then learn all of these little practices, these occult practices, to allow you to enter into communion with Allah, enter into His throne room. Then you go through all of these things. And Gnostic vision, they speak of Gnostic vision, and they mean it in stopping at the first traces of gnosis, which is a bad thing, thinking you've achieved it. And then gnosis and contemplative knowledge of the divine. To reach nearness to Allah, you must have the gnosis. And notice the Muslims, the Sufis are telling us, the Muslim scholars, the Imams are telling us, we have attained to gnosis. All the other Gnostics that came before, they were just pretenders. We're the guys that figured it out. We are the true Gnostics. See, they speak of the Gnostics in the first of his states is affected by what he learns, the Gnostic's spiritual will, and so on and so on and so on. So those who have Gnostic insight, guess that we've reached the level of those to whom the unseen is disclosed and who have Gnostic insight. I'll pause here. Any comments from you guys?
What is the for, let's just say, another one of the many, is it 73 sects of Islam, to turn around and say exactly the same thing then, that they've reached this point of gnosis with Allah?
Well, yeah, except these are the scholars that are officially recognized as, what few people know is that Al-Azhar University, again, which is the most exclusive and the most authoritative Islamic seminary in the world, which produces thousands of imams and sends them out to different countries, they obviously have the 4 schools of Sunni Fiqh. However, they also recognize the Jafari school of jurisprudence. But few people realize that, and I mentioned this before, that the current rector of Al-Azhar is a Sufi. The previous rector was also a Sufi. And of course, Al-Azhar also teaches the 7 major schools of Sufi occult knowledge, of Sufi spiritualism. So they don't only turn out imams that are knowledgeable in the Sharia, but they also turn out imams that are knowledgeable in the Sharia plus the Hakika. So they're a Sufi college as well, which means that it is entirely mainstream. Any thoughts from you, Thunderous, Thaddeus?
Well, it's just very interesting. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about last week, where there's a different standard for the scholars than the common Muslim. You know, the common Muslim, it's forbidden to practice philosophy, as we saw last week. For the scholar, perfectly fine. For the common Muslim, no doubt it's forbidden to practice mystical, to do mystical practices. For the scholar, hey, it's not only good, it's the best thing you can do to have this mystical enlightenment. It is the highest level of achievement, even though that kind of dabbling is completely forbidden for the common Muslim.
It's actually a very good point. Yeah. So notice here that it says that in Islam, unlawful knowledge, okay, haram knowledge, illegal knowledge for lay Muslims is philosophy. Philosophy is considered illegal for the lay Muslim.
And yet, what are we reading here? We're reading a philosophical text. Interesting.
Yeah, that's odd. That is true. Yeah. Yes.
Well, she's reasons was just said the same thing as I was thinking, that there's a contradiction there in that what we're reading is philosophy to a certain point of view. I'll let it continue.
Yeah. So okay. So let me jump. I'll pick up where we left off last time. Right. So let me see. Let me just close that. Okay. So the scholarly consensus is where we ended last time. Right. The ijma, okay, is the agreement of all the mujtahids of the Muslims existing at one particular period after the Prophet's death. So that's in the past. So the ijma, the consensus of all the scholars, is sealed, right? And yeah.
Sorry. How many? Do they have like a body or a council or a board that there can only ever be a certain number of scholars, or
Okay, so yeah, let me try to.
At any one given time. So as Islam moves forward, as they're dying out, they're constantly replaced. So there's a consistent number.
Yeah, look, actually, you know what? I need to do something on that because yeah, look, you'll find that, for instance, within the major authorities of Islam, they have a thing called the Shura councils, right, or Shura councils, right? They'll have that, but the things we need to know: the single most important, the number one scholar in Islam, right? The number one scholar in Islam is Ghazali, okay? Then you have four scholars, okay? Obviously, these are the founders of the schools of fiqh, right? Hanafi, Hanbali, Shafi, Maliki, and so on, right? Mm-hmm. Right, those are the four scholars. Then you have like, it depends on the number. So let's just round it off to 30, okay? Let's just round it off at 30 scholars. These are called the Sheikh al-Islam.
Yeah.
Right? So these are in the past. These are the 30 most, or 28 or 27 or whatever number you want to figure out there. These are the most important scholars in Islam in this sequence. These Sheikh al-Islam are the... Okay, so Ghazali number one after Muhammad himself. Then comes these four guys, Hanafi, Hanbali, Maliki, and Shafi. Then comes these 30 Sheikh al-Islam. These are the most influential scholars to ever live. And then, of course, the current scholars, and there will be a council, Al-Azhar being preeminent there, and as well as in Saudi, they will continue this administrative role that was left to them.
Your list seems to be incomplete because I don't see Random Muslim 123 from the YouTube comment section, who we all know.
Oh my golly! Oh my gosh! Hold on. Yes. I don't know. I'm sure there's a corrupt cop from a movie that we know of that should be on that list, and maybe a guy called Double X something. Yeah, there's a few guys out there. Yeshua the King, thank you very much. And have we gone over the rights of sex slaves? I actually covered that in a different show, but I could probably, in the future, I don't think I'm touching on it right now, but it's something that I could do in detail. But I will have some information on that. Look at Demis and Jizya. And I've covered also jihad on Thaddeus' channel. So I will have gone over in detail over sex slaves. But you're very welcome. If you have questions, drop it in. And if I don't do it today, then I will consider doing it in the future. I'll most certainly make a point of getting to that. Notice that non-mujtahids are of no consequence. So Random Muslim 123 in the comment section, his view is of no importance. Right?
Huh.
Yeah.
Strange. That's not what we hear from Random Muslim.
Well, yes, that is true. Now, the ruling agreed upon is an authoritative part of sacred law that is obligatory to obey, not lawful to disobey. Okay? New mujtahids of a succeeding era, that would be today, okay? Nor can mujtahids of a succeeding era make the thing an object of a new ijtihad, because the ruling on it is an absolute legal ruling which does not admit of being contravened or annulled. Can be held in abeyance, but cannot be annulled. So, this is where we ended last time, so this is a new slide. The capital crime of kufr, which is denying the ijma, the consensus. So, someone who is raised among Muslims who denies the obligatoriness of the prayer, the zakat, the fasting, Ramadan, the pilgrimage, or the unlawfulness of wine and adultery, or denies something else upon which there is scholarly consensus if he disagrees with his scholars. The ijma, which is necessarily known as being of the religion, thereby becomes an unbeliever, a kafir, and is executed for his unbelief.
That must account for about 1.4 billion Muslims then.
Yeah, I know. But of course, then where does taqiyya fit into this? Because you're allowed to lie about your religion, so it's a kind of a flexible set of rules, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Right, so we've mentioned this before. Islam's 2 divisions and 4 levels. I believe I've covered this before. Should I go over this again, or should I skip this? Okay, well, let's quick run through, guys. Okay, so Islam has 2 divisions and 4 levels. Now, understand there are sub-levels within these that go quite deep. I'm not going to go into that. On the first level is the Sharia level, the legal, the legislative level. This is the rules that Muslims have to follow, right? Now, the Sharia is all about obeying Allah. This is known as the Zahir, the outer, the exoteric aspect of Islam, the public aspect of Islam. Then the outer meaning, oh, you know what, let me change something in the slide. I have no idea why it did not. I'm going to change something here. I'm going to fix something here. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm just going to run. Okay, that slide should be back now. Right. So, this is the outer meaning, the outer practice of Islam. This is what Muslims, lay Muslims, are exposed to. Right, so this is the literal reading of the Quran, the literal reading of the Hadith. This is not for them to do deep exegesis of the documents. So this is the first or the plain level of meaning. This is this level here, the Ibara level, the literal level, the Zahir. The scholars call this Islam for the masses. That's the name. The scholar involved here, the specific scholar who named this, who is authoritative here, is a guy called Kushairi. Right, that's a scholar called, so, Kushairi. That's the scholar that's authoritative here. Right? So, but this is Islam for the masses. This is Islam for the plebs, for the proletariat. Any comments from you guys?
Is there, so in effect what there is, so there are the 2 stages of the 2 conditions of the Muslim mind, those without knowledge and those with knowledge. Is there any kind of like a recourse or punishment for those that are in the pleb level, the proletariat, as you've put it, if they want to ascend into that knowledge, but they do it via their own research means?
No. You have to have a scholar guide you. You must be under the lineage of a scholar, because the blessings, right, flows from Allah to Muhammad to the top scholars and down through the imams, and it's a chain that you must join. So there's a loyalty aspect to it. You have to be loyal.
But is there, okay, I understand that, but is there not a recourse or a punishment if you choose to gain the information? Because the information now is very, we can get access to information. You don't have to be a part of a group to get the access to information, because we're in the digital age now. So if somebody from the proletariat wanted to get access to the information, how would the upper classes in this knowledge view those from the proletariat that have got access to that information, and therefore make an inquiry on that, or making it known that they've inquired in that information?
They would be regarded as hypocrites. They would be regarded as outcasts. They speak about it in the Reliance actually quite extensively, about false scholars, about false Sufis, about false Gnostics.
But if
So-
you're somebody that's just going into the information and not making the claim of any position that you are, you're just looking into the information. Would that
No,
not
you're
be
still
in
wrong.
itself an
You're
act?
still wrong. I'm not sure if they can. You're still stepping outside of your bounds. I'm not sure if there's a punishment for that, but you are stepping. You have to go under the guidance of a scholar who's senior to you,
Okay.
because you're a legislative subject. You're a legislative subject. You have to formally go through the process.
Yeah.
So the second level is it's called the Ishara, right? Which is for the legislative practitioners. That's your imams, your sheikhs, your qadis, right? And your next level, right? These are the administrators here. So these are your administrators, right? Then your next level is Lataif. So they enter into what's called the Hakika. This is the knowledge, the gnosis, right? This is your quote-unquote spiritual level in Islam. So this is where you know Allah, the personality, the character. How's it, Das Truth? Welcome. So this is the batin, the inner, the esoteric, the secret level. Right? So this is inner, direct personal knowledge, or the gnosis of Allah. This is reserved for the spiritual practitioners who are of two levels. The highest level being the haqa'iq, the reality, the truth, the divine essence. These are the advanced. Both of these are Sufis. Now, I must mention here, Lataif is the plural of, and I need to discuss this another time, but Lataif is the plural of Latifa, right? And so we have, for instance, there's the goddess Diana in Greek mythology, right? She's also supposed to be a goddess of wisdom, but we also have Sophia, right? From which we get sophistry, right? So Latifa is basically the Islamic version of Sophia. This is their version of Sophia, the truth, the knowledge of Sophia, the sophistry. This is where we get the term sophistry from. So this is sophistry. In fact, the Sufis often joke and they call themselves the Sufists because they practice sophistry. No, you'll see it. So your thoughts, Thunderous? Thaddeus?
Yeah, that's just humorous there. And they're kind of acknowledging what they're doing. This argument for the sake of winning the argument, not for the sake of truth.
That's because they have no truth, Thaddeus. I mean, that's the fact, isn't it? And this is what this is all about, because if you have no truth, all you can ever do is lie to defend it.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Katie Nagurski. Very, very much appreciated. Thank you very much. Yeah. So the Haqqaiq is the reality. Again, these are only for the Sufis. These are the real major scholars because they've mastered and they are obedient to the Sharia, and then they can move over to this level. So also, I want to make one last statement here. This is something that, again, I've last read through these notes like 2 or 3 years ago. I read through it a couple of months back, but to go into detail, you need to understand that Latifa has another name, okay? Latifa is very closely, the Lataif, right, the plural being Lataif, is very closely related to another name. She is associated with, or maybe the same character as what we know as Laylat. Any guesses on what Laylat is?
I'm going to take a guess there. Alat?
Lilith. Thaddeus, you want to offer something there?
No, I was just making an acknowledgement noise. I
Okay.
didn't have anything to add.
Okay, Lilith she became a demon. She ate babies. She was, according to Lilith, so very briefly, I'm not going to get this right because I don't have my notes in front of me. Oh, a small correction, by the way, I must make a note. Mujahideen, someone corrected us there. I said is the plural of Mujahid, so Mujahideen doesn't contain the word deen as someone of the deen. So someone corrected that's the plural. Adam's first wife, Dashing Rogue, welcome, good to see you. So yes, Lilith is Adam's first wife. She turned evil, she turned against God. She became a demon, she became a succubus, a sex demon, and she was banished. She was banished and she was sent to the dry desert places. She was sent to the high places, the caves. Now, anyone want to make any connections here?
Dry cave, sorry, sex. I'm just making a stab in the dark here. Did she once grab a guy in a cave and squeezed him tight?
There's a possibility of that because she was a succubus. And what if Mo's little sex addiction was caused because he was serving a sex demon? Right, now, sure, it's not biblical, it's a Jewish myth, but understand that these myths actually are rife within the Islamic literature. These Gnostic stories are rife because the old Gnostic literature, especially the Sethian, the Sethian. Let me get it here. Seth, the idea of Seth, the Sethian, and the who was the son or the father of Seth? Enoch. The Sethian and Enochian Gnostic ideas are rife within Islam. You may not be familiar with them, but these deuterocanonical ideas are rife within Islam. Yes.
Yeah, just one quick comment.
Sure.
That this coming from Jewish mysticism, no surprise there. Everything in Islam seems to come from Jewish myths. There's very little that is directly influenced from the scriptures, even though it claims to be teaching the Torah and the gospel. It actually is all copied from secondary sources, from these stories that would be being passed around in the desert. These stories that the a ignorant trader would hear and mistake for being the gospel or the Torah.
Right. Well spoken. Yeah, no, fair point. So yeah, I'll move on from there. Okay, so you've got Islam for the masses, and you've got Islam for the higher scholars, and a different Islam for the higher scholars, and a different Islam for the even higher scholars. So notice that the forbidden is allowed in Islam. The forbidden. So Islam is not a moral system of right and wrong. Understand, it is a legal system of legal and illegal. And as Thaddeus helped me to explain this very well one day, it has exceptions and it has loopholes. And imams, understand, are not priests. Technically, they are lawyers. So dispensation is when what is normally forbidden is made permissible because of necessity or need. This is a very broad necessity or need. If someone is forced to make a statement of unbelief, of kufr, it is made permissible to ease his hardship for him to do so, as long as faith remains firm in his heart. In other words, you can lie as long as faith remains firm in your heart. Now, what is interesting is that this concept first made its presence in the late 1st century or early 2nd century. Okay, in a group called the Al-Chasai, who had a book. Sorry, my bad. Okay, they had the book of Al-Chasai, which was given to Al-Chasai by an angel. And so Al-Chasai received a book from an angel, and part of their rules is that you can lie about your religion as long as your heart remains firm in faith. Just a sheer coincidence. I have spoken about this in the past on Ask Truth's channel, oddly enough, and I'll talk about it again when I have the time to get around to it. Comments, guys, before I go on?
Can anyone see a pattern emerging yet?
Yeah, Satan seems to like this playbook where he sends an angel to give a book. I mean, it's very strange.
Yeah, very odd. And there's a lot of parallels with the Islamic story and the book of Al-Chasai. It's really odd. It's really interesting once you get into the history. Okay, so the Mujtahids Mutlaq, these are the absolute experts. So an absolute expert in Islamic legal reasoning is a Mujtahid Mutlaq, such as Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi, or Ahmad. These are the founders of the 4 schools of, Angel Moroni and the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to. Yeah. It happened 3 times, apparently, or maybe more, and other religions never took off.
Yes, very well spoken, Sola. Thank you for adding that little fact. That is, yes, an angel gave me a book. Believe me, you bigot. So, yes. Okay, now notice, the 4 schools with these imams are considered sound. It is quite otherwise with the 4 schools whose imams, okay, they have not, because these schools have spent themselves in checking the positions of their schools, explaining what could be rigorously authenticated, and the other schools, of course, did not. And their scholars have thus achieved safety from textual corruption and have been able to discern the genuine from the poorly authenticated, except when Muslim scholars with the name Random Muslim 123 tells us, well, let me explain how weak that is, how false that is.
Yep, Daif Bakari and all that.
Correct. Any comment, Thunderous, from you before I move on?
No, continue. We've heard these arguments all before from the proletariat.
All right. Thank you very much, Dashing Robe. Very much appreciated. So the Ijtihad Mutlaq, okay, is the creative act of reasoning, right, through which the founding imams derived from the revealed sources, that would be the Quran, the Hadith, and the Sirah, a systematic structure of, of law. Oh, by the way, small pet peeve. Now look, I do occasionally make mistakes, like when I said mujahideen, okay? I think I may have made a mistake there. Apparently last week I did. I said something incorrect, which someone corrected on Thaddeus' channel, right? Someone left a comment on mine. And but I'm very, very careful to have the sources in front of me. So when I speak off of my sources, obviously there's the risk that I'll misremember something. But someone came on. I spoke last week about the term siyar, and which is the original term for the sirah. The term sirah, Muhammad's biographies, originally really is translated within the Sharia as the wars of the Prophet, the history of Muhammad's raids, his attacks, his war on others, right? And I mentioned this, and then someone called Truth Defenders came along and tried to school me on this whole issue and tell me how wrong I was. They even went to Murad and they asked Murad about it. Now, certainly in the colloquial sense, the term siyar means custom or habit. But within the Sharia, it means the custom or the habit of the Prophet to make war on other people. I posted a very long article on Thaddeus' channel. I can show it another time, but I provided about 8 or 9 different sources which all happen to say the same thing. So understand, I'm not making things up. It's, so yeah.
So what do you call it?
Yeah, sorry?
So whether you call it seerah or say the habits or customs of the Prophet, or whether you call it the wars of the Prophet, what difference does it make? Because his habit was his custom and his custom was his habit, and both of them was to make war with people.
Correct. And then also I showed very clearly that the Book of Islamic International Law. Let me see if I have because I had. Let me bring this up. So I mentioned this because I went through this book as 100 great books of Islamic civilization translated at great expense by the Pakistani government. Muslim international law, not Pakistani international law, the international law of the Muslims, which includes in chapter 1, let's have a look here. Chapter 1, instructions of the Holy Prophet about the conduct of war. Right? So the very first chapter of Islamic international law is how to make war and how to handle the prisoners. That's the religion of peace right there. Yeah, thoughts?
Would that be because it's an international book and therefore under international scrutiny? Would that not be an edited sort of like pacified version of what the reality is?
This is a simplified version of it, but if you read the reviews of it, they'll say that non-Muslims owe a debt to this fantastic scholar who wrote the very first book on international law. An Islamic scholar wrote the very first book on international relations and international law, and the whole world owes him a debt for his great work. And the very first chapter says, attack all your neighbors.
That's quite humorous. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's the first person to literally use the word international. But most likely it's just a made-up claim to begin with. But let's pretend that it's true. Let's pretend that this is the first book on international law. It doesn't make it great. It just makes it the first. And the laws themselves are pretty horrific.
How did this guy not get the Nobel Peace Prize?
Yeah, exactly. Spreading the religion of peace. He should be given the Peace Prize, right?
Yeah. I mean, if they can show us the Book of International Law that says how to, I don't know, be nice to your neighbors. Somehow they forgot instructions of the Holy Prophet about the conduct of war. And then international relations. Oh, the prohibition of warlike operation during the sacred months has been abrogated, 9.5, when the sacred months have passed. Okay, so moving on. So mutlaq means absolute. Okay, this is applied to the mujtahids of the heroic age. Oh my golly. The founders of the schools of Fiqh were called the Mujtahid Mutlaq, an epithet or a name which none after them has carried. So those 4 scholars I mentioned earlier, no one after them has the right to be a Mujtahid Mutlaq. They are the absolute scholars.
That's a bit like when Muhammad said he was the seal of the prophets. He basically closed it off after himself.
Yes, yeah. Minor attracted pedophiles. Sorry, MAP stands for minor attracted pedophile. Let's be clear about that. So, right. Now, theocratic system. So let's have a look at that. Yeah, I'm not sure what he's on about, but Sharia law, the translation, I'd like to see similar laws that look Sharia like in America.
Yeah, I don't know if he's just trying to distract or he actually
Yeah.
has trying to make a point. I don't know, but whatever he's trying to get through, it's not coming through because it's not clear what he means.
Yeah, well, let's leave it for a moment and see what happens. So now, a theocratic legal system basically comes from a revealed scripture, like the Quran, right? And from there, the scholars will have these using prescribed rules of exegesis, they will then extrapolate a religio-political, legal, and social system. So you have a revealed source, right? You've got the sacred book that came from the angel. Then you'll have, from that, these scholars applying a set of rules to them to extract a complete social and political and legal system. So divine revelation, they believe, okay, which controls human reason, is the only path to the law. So in other words, your reason must be slaved to the divine revelation, must be limited within the context of whatever the religious law is. And then denying that law can be created by human legislation, as in the West. So Muslims deny Western legislation because it's made by man. Whereas we can very much see Sharia law is made by man. Yes?
No, that was the point I was trying to make. So how does the Muslim reconcile then being submissive to the man-made law of the kuffar, while living in the Western land, that law overrides the law by the school of fiqh?
Well, remember that there's multiple different mitigating factors. One would be, for instance, that they are too weak. So Muslims are not to rise up until they're strong enough to take power, right? Once they have enough power, they should then seize power, but they should always be working towards seizing power. Two, you have hudna. Okay, hudna is treaties. Okay, treaties, right? So with the treaties, you can then, every 10 years, you can renew the treaty. So the treaty is renewed every 10 years. And however, if you have sufficient power, you can take power immediately. Yes?
But the things with the hudna, right? If you're making treaties, that is a negotiation between two particular parties. But the school of fiqh and its law versus the kuffar law of the West are not making any treaty with each other. So in a sense, then the Muslim in the West has to sit, almost be like a sleeper cell until the numbers have got a sufficient proportion.
Yes, that is true. Correct. He has to work to undermine. Yeah, certainly, that would be correct.
And is this, would you say then, when you consider, say, Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, Sikhism, and other religions, you don't see them, for theistic reasons, making a political point in various governments in Europe, as an example, in order to gain office, but you do find that with the Islamic religions? Do you think that
because it's a political religion, it's a political system, so it has to seize political power.
Yeah, so that's where it's working to undermine the governments of where they are not indigenous, to seek to undermine, to establish in an incremental sense the presence of Sharia or an Islamic influence.
Step by step, yeah. Thaddeus, any comment before I move on?
No, you nailed it, that Islam is a political system, so members of the deen automatically are inclined to seek political office. And once they're there, they're not going to be, they may take an oath to uphold the U.S. Constitution or the British law or whatever country they're in, but they're not really, that oath is meaningless to them.
Yeah.
Their real loyalty is to Islam, and they'll be doing what they can to undermine the country that they are serving.
Yeah, correct.
That would mean then that under the present system of Europe and America, when you're talking about diversity and inclusiveness and proportional representation, these kind of like principles and politics and ideas are actually serving to undermine these governments, because those are the very avenues of pursuit that the Sharia are going to use in order to place itself within these governments under diversity, under inclusive, and under a proportionate representation and diversity.
Well, yeah, they'll take whatever opportunity has been granted to them, and they will use that to their advantage.
Yeah, I just want to mention false doctrines. There was a comment that was withheld that I just enabled. He's referring to child sex legislation in America. Now, what is interesting, legislation in America is changing as you've got, let's just say, certain forces that have a distinctly atheist, communist bent, as well as you're getting more and more Muslims into legislative authority in America. Now you're seeing that, right? Don't forget, this whole idea of child sex is not only illegal in Western law, it is immoral under the Christian idea of the moral law.
Can
Right.
I comment on that?
Sure.
I've actually put something on my YouTube channel about maps being recognized by the World Health Organization from 0 to 4-year-olds and up, and they're actually I don't want to go too far on a tangent because I know you and I are going to be discussing this in the future, but predicated under atheism and evolution, because it's the only objective standard you can actually use to implement it. But maps is a very real thing, and it's the legalization of and sexualization of infants, and that's on my YouTube channel. And the World Health Organization are backing it.
And that's part of the UN, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And the UN is at the moment, it's both communist and Islamic. So yeah. And so things are not going well. As you see these other cultures with different morals coming in, you're seeing those morals being legislated. But of course, don't force your Christian beliefs on me, but it's okay if we enforce men can have babies beliefs on you. Right? By the way, today I saw an old woman give up her seat on the bus for a pregnant man. It was beautiful. It was very touching.
Under the Sharia, then, if a man suckles another man's wife 5 times, 10 times, he becomes mahram to that family. But under the new law of chest feeding, if a woman was to suckle my chest, would that make her mahram to me as well?
You'd be her child, I guess. Who knows how that works, right? I have no... Okay, moving on. Let's get back to the talk here. So, various Western scholars, okay, from Snook-Grenier, Fitzgerald, Schacht, and Libesny et al., produced to assume that besides pre-Islamic Arabian custom, which was the case, Jewish law is an obvious origin of a lot of the Sharia. Now, do understand, before you guys get all, Jewish law is evil, look at the Jews, they eat babies, and... No, the Muslims copied the template. They took on many of the ideas, and they corrupted many of those ideas. Now, that's not to say there aren't issues in the Talmud. That's not to say there are no issues with the rabbis, because you can certainly find issues. But understand, in many cases, you'll find a direct inversion of what is within the biblical law, right, the Mosaic law. So they share a theocratic orientation. They share geographic and temporal time-based proximity. So the Talmud was completed about the time of the Prophet's birth, and they share common languages, and we'll get more into that. Right, so the most important early Islamic law school was the Hanafi school at Kufa in Iraq. Okay, so if we go to Kufa, right, and this was close to the Jewish academies of Sura and Pumbedita. There were about a dozen academies in Iraq at the time. And several of these Islamic academies were very close to, almost next door to these these Jewish academies, right, yeshivas. And these scholars studied the Talmud throughout the formative period of Islamic law, and some of them converted, some of them moved across. And Eastern Talmudic Aramaic was the lingua franca of Iraq for centuries after the Arab conquest, hence the use of Aramaic within Islamic scriptures. Thoughts before I go on?
Oh, I would just add that we also have direct evidence in that stories that are found only in the Talmud somehow have made their way into the Quran, Allah's supposed word. So it's a clear influence upon early Muslims.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah, so we'll come up with a map later. For instance, this is the Mishkat al-Masabih. Okay, you can see the different spelling here, the Mishkat al-Masabih. And this is by a scholar called Tibrizi. It's a collection of the most authentic hadiths regarding the actions and sayings of Muhammad and it's exhibiting the origin of the manners and customs, okay, and the civil, religious, and military policy of the Muslims. So this is a volume of hadith which includes all of the hadiths from the Kitab al-Sitta, right, the 6 books. But notice, it's a comprehensive book on hadith taught around the world to students of the subject of hadith, where it is studied before the 6 famous collections to be able to prepare for them. So even these hadith collections, which are considered as precursors to the legal system, tell us that Islam has civil, religious, and military policy, which marks it as completely different from Christianity, which only has a moral law, does not have civil law, doesn't have military law. Thoughts?
I noticed that also that civil is first. It's first and foremost civil, then religious, and then military policies of Muslims.
Civil law comes first. Yeah, that's a fair point. Why did they place this? And the manners and customs, the sirah, right? The siyar, the customs, the manners and customs of Muhammad, right? Actions and sayings of Muhammad, which is civil, then religious, and military. So hopefully that backs up my saying about what the sirah is about regarding the actions and sayings. That's the sirah. All right. So what the fiqh? Basic definitions, right? So the Sharia is the law of Allah and Muhammad. In the Sharia, they're both considered the lawgiver. They are considered the lawgiver, and they are equal in authority, right? And notice the lawgiver, synonymous with Allah or His Messenger. So in other words, Allah and His Messenger are effectively one and the same, which is shirk, I believe. The Sharia are the eternal values and moral principles derived from the Quran and the Sunnah. These are explicit statements. Then it's the moral, legal, military, political, social, commercial, and religious legislation, right? Which is all civil legislation, effectively. So remember, it's a moral system, social system, religious system, military system, all in all, right? Sharia is the body of revealed knowledge, right? Explicit statements in Quran and Sunnah and so on, found in both Quran and the Sunnah, and laws that are inferred or implied from the revealed sources, where there's a clear correlation to what's implied. And it's totalitarian, exactly, Harrell. It's totally totalitarian. I've covered that in the previous show. So these are general principles of law, not specific, not detailed. The fiqh is the applied body of law derived from the Sharia to cover situations not directly covered in Sharia law. It's the law in practice. So this is the law in theory. This is the law in practice. Any comments from you guys? Yeah.
Does the law, okay, when you look at the Mosaic Law was fitted or fixed for 1500 years of the duration of the nation of Israel, and then it was replaced with the law of Christ. Okay, but that's fixed too as well. But is the fiqh law malleable? Because
yes, it is. It is to a degree. To a degree, it's to adapt to new situations. Yes. But older fiqh does not change. But if there are new situations, then yes, they are able. But it must be derived from the already. It must align with the existing corpus of law.
Okay.
Yeah. So look at the ilm, the science. Okay, the ilm shari is revealed knowledge. See, so what is in the Sharia is a science. It's actually a science. So it's like reading the Bible and saying the 10 Commandments are a science. That is how Islam views science. Grace, thank you very much. Hello there. Andrew, welcome. Good to see you. All right. And notice, shari, plural shawari, is a clearly defined way, right? Now, notice the lawgiver, characteristically, is Muhammad in his function as a model and the perfect exemplar of the law. Now, of course, false doctrine says Sharia law is confusing for a small dude like me, though I do see a lot of similarities inside America and, of course, other. That's because you have Muslims in power, and it aligns a lot with the totalitarian ideas that are being imposed right now in these countries. So let me continue. So we're looking at these concepts: understanding, knowledge, and science. So the fiqh is legal doctrine. Literally, it means the understanding. It's the applied, tangible legislation on religious obligations, on commercial transactions, on crimes, etc. Right? It is also, militarily, the Sharia and the fiqh are defined as enemy threat doctrine. It's how they conduct warfare. Hariel says, Islam is a chameleon, abrogation, moving goalposts, a clerical. Yes, it's a very much a chameleon. It moves the goalposts all the time. Any comments from you guys before I go on?
I was just looking at the previous page, the model of Muhammad. Obviously, that's obviously a plagiarism of the model of Christ, but Christ was a real person.
And Moses, yeah, especially Moses, because Moses actually brought law. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the thing I'm just toying with this idea at the moment, because obviously there is the discussion in the world about whether Muhammad was a real person or whether he existed or not. Just on the assumption that he didn't exist, do you think that the invention of Muhammad was created so that they had a visual, almost a mental image of who Muhammad was by the way of action rather than just written law?
I mean, look, they had to replace Jesus because Muhammad is the new counterfeit Jesus. They had to replace Jesus, same idea. And you need some kind of binding concept to rally around.
Exactly, that's the point.
I mean, if you look online and you look at Sharia courses, right? There's one that I've looked at. that says come and learn the Sharia. This is like a 6-month course or something for introduction to Sharia for people who want to learn it. And it says the Sharia is the source around which the Islamic community in its early stages was formed, because it was a common set of ideas, principles, morals, laws, and rules that Muslims could rally around that was the same despite their geographical dispersion. Right? Yeah. Thaddeus, you want to do? You're nodding.
No, I was just agreeing that it makes sense, right? That Islam starts as this system of political conquest, and now they're in control of all these diverse lands with diverse people. They need something to tie everything together. What are they going to do? Well, let's create a unifying system of law, and let's give it some authority. Let's say that this law comes directly from Allah.
Exactly that. And then they invent a man to build the law around, so they've got some kind of mental visual representation of what they're looking at, whilst the Mosaic law, the Jews have Moses to look at, or Abraham, and the Christians have Christ. Yet those in those books, recensions, are actually real people, whereas in Islam, because they don't have to have a real person, they have to invent a person.
Oh, while I'm here, I want to show you guys something. So this is the apartheid religion. Restricted area, Muslims only permitted. That's good old Mecca, right? Because Islam is for everybody except for non-Muslims who can't go to Mecca, right? Here's the beauty of the Kaaba, glorious, amazing glory. But it's a oh yeah, hold on. This is the Islamic oral tradition, right there. Okay. But what I want to do is I've been doing some research because I want to do a talk about Mecca in the future. Have a look here at this illustration or picture. It might well be a photograph, because if you look here, we'll see this. I'm going to go up to this one so that you zoomed in here. Thaddeus, what do you see around the Kaaba? What is that? What is that?
See a bunch of little stone statues or pillars.
Does it look like statues of, people-looking things? Like little gods, maybe? People?
Yeah, they could be idols, and that's a possibility. I mean,
those are idols.
A little small to say definitively, but
oh no, we can get a little more definitive. We can get a little, but doesn't it look like idols? That Thunderous, what does it look like to you?
It's exactly that. The fact that they haven't got them there now in the current Mecca is evidence of what you're trying to say here now, or show us here now.
Yeah. So
I was
notice
just gonna say they don't look like water fountains or something. They must have a purpose, right?
Yeah. So this is one of the earliest. This is probably the earliest existing, as far as I can tell. Right. Notice the stone pillars. I mentioned the stone pillars last time. Right. The pagan pillars, pagan gods, as well as the stone idols. Notice here, this is the little moon-shaped object. Now, what Mecca looks like today is a completely different beast.
I was going to ask you, it looks like, because I'm looking at the door as well, unless that's a reflected image of the door seems to be on the other side of the Kaaba than what it is on this image here. So the door's been replaced. I can see that the structure here is smaller than the one that's in Mecca by height. The curved structure, the crescent structure with the idols on, has also been renewed and replaced.
Yes, it's all been replaced. Even the brickwork. There's a completely new Kaaba. Look at this one versus this one. Cinder blocks versus these bricks, these stones.
Yes, exactly that, and it's bigger. So they've proportionately changed the size.
It's a completely different location. And notice next to the door here, you should have this little guy here. This little guy here should be next to the door right there on this corner. But the door is on the wrong side, because unless this is flipped around backwards,
exactly my point.
The door should be here. The door should be here, and then this little silver thing should be there.
If Mecca has any more builders, it'll be the Tower of Babel.
Yeah, I know. Now notice, this is apparently this is the oldest known photograph of Mecca. Okay, if someone is Arabic, if you can read this one, it'll be interesting to know what it says here. Someone can read Arabic, but apparently this is the oldest known photograph. Look at these human pillars here, these idols, these god idols. Let's have a look at this one. This is apparently the earliest known illustration. Does that look like an idol of a man figure? Notice it's changed again. But you'd certainly have man idols here. Let's have a look here. Right, let's have a look. See, idol, human idol. This is a pagan idol. This was in 1826 and after 1826. Right, now you can have a look here again. This one's a very high quality view of the same thing. You see that? See this? These are idols. These are gods. And it's changed, and then you'll notice And this, then we get to here, okay? Look how different, this is what during construction. And then you can see it change from this, which was this, which was this. Notice the vast difference. And then we start to get to the modern Kaaba. Now you have this. This is 1880. So from 1826, you had the earliest photograph, and then you get to 1880, and you get this. A vast change in just 54 years. Thoughts from you guys, Thaddeus?
Yeah, it's very interesting. This is the first time I've seen these things, but the statues are definitely human figures.
Yeah.
If a Muslim wants to come up with some other explanation other than them being idol, I'd like to hear it. But I have a feeling they're going to say that, oh, that's just a fake photo or something.
Okay, well, let's look at Edu Islam TV. They confirm this is the first ever photo of the Kaaba captured by Sadiq Bey in 1880. Let's go back to the 1826 photograph or something. The same idols are right there. The same human idols are right there. These are the gods that they worshipped. This was a pagan place of worship in the early 1800s. Jibril has been redecorating for sure. Notice how this has changed and rebuilt. Notice you got this ring around it. Okay, here's this little guy, and you can see all of this changing over time.
I like how they put the caption there that it probably looked the same during the Prophet's time.
Oh, wait, where was that?
Exactly. It looks completely different 50 years later.
Oh, yes.
It looked the same 1,300 years ago.
But notice they have idols. So yeah, they must have had these idols during the time of the Prophet. Yeah. So yeah, I just thought I'd mention that out of interest. I'll move on, but this is something I want to work on as well, as soon as I can. So there's plenty of things I want to work on. But yeah, I just thought that was helpful and interesting to you guys. Okay, so the science of deducing Islamic laws from evidence is found in the sources of Islamic law. That's the fiqh. So the fiqh is the science of deducing Islamic laws from evidence found in the sources. The sources is the Quran, Hadith, and Sirah. Okay, yeah, imperfectly preserved, right? Laughably preserved. So the fiqh is the body of deduced laws with source references for authority. Okay, so it's the body of deduced laws with source references. In other words, the Quran says, the Hadith says, but this is the law derived from that. It is the practical implementation of the Sharia, right? It's the science of determining the precise terms. What did Allah mean? What did Muhammad mean? That's what the fiqh does for us. Perfectly pretzeled. I like that. Perfectly pretzeled. So the
stole it from someone.
It's beautiful though. So the usul are the fundamental principles of Islamic law, and the term comes from Shafi, who he didn't originate it, but he's the guy who basically gave it its meaning. The usul al-fiqh, okay, the fundamental principles, the roots of the fiqh. Usul al-fiqh, according to the Encyclopedia of Islam, are the roots or the sources of legal knowledge. So the roots of the tree, they literally took this from the idea of the Jewish tree, right? So you've got the roots on the bottom, but then you have the tree that grows, the trunk that grows, and then the branches. So in other words, you're studying the roots, the Quran and the Sunnah, but you're ignoring the tree and the forest that comes from the tree. So the roots or sources of legal knowledge being the Quran, the Sunnah, the consensus, and analogy. That's the usul al-fiqh. It's the legal theory. Okay, it's legal theory. And the fiqh is the human effort to know and apply the Sharia. It is considered imperfect, thus it is changeable and adaptable to changing circumstances. Hopefully that answers that question for you, Thunderous.
Yeah. And also to, is it Harry L. Johnson, We Are Borg? I said that years ago on another show where I did a discussion on the Borg may well, the Islam and the Kaaba may well have been the original inspiration for the Borg in Star Wars, the Star Trek series, because when you look at their mottos, death is irrelevant, resistance is futile, you will be assimilated, we'll absorb your technology, into our culture. You really have to look at some things in history to see, well, where did they get the inspiration from that? And I think Islam is definitely Borg, absolutely.
That makes good sense, yeah. So guys, we've got another 5 minutes. So we go from verses in the Quran to doctrine to books. So no distinction is made between rules of Sharia law and the rules of religion. They're one and the same. So doctrine is a principle or position or the body of principles in a branch of knowledge or system of belief. Right? This is the detail, not what is in the scripture, but this is how it is understood, how it is applied within the people who are the senior practitioners of it. It's a principle of law established through precedent. So the principle is set and then you derive law from that. It's a body of knowledge that is taught. And also, doctrine is a military principle, a set of military strategies. And the legal experts in Islam are called the people of the science, the al-ilm. They're the people of knowledge, the people of science. Okay? The people of science. Now, actually, hold on. You know what? I want to look up something here. The people of knowledge, the people of science. I want to show you guys, before I go further, let me have a look at this. I should skip. Let me just do this. Notice the scholars are the people of science, the people of knowledge. Notice in 1 Timothy 6:20, and using strong Greek 1108. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings, or pointless empty talk and contradictions of... Actually, you know what? Let me change the color of that slide, because I was still working on that slide. So, sorry about that. Let me just change this. You know what? I've actually just forgotten how to change the color of the slide. So let me go back to design. Slide format background. Solid fill. I'm going to make it just plain yellow. There we go. Okay. Okay, I just remembered. So, okay. Avoid the vain babblings and pointless empty talk and contradictions of what is falsely called knowledge, the ilm, the science, and oppositions of science, falsely so called. Science, falsely so called. By professing it, some have strayed from the faith. So Muslims...
Yeah.
Sorry, go on. Yeah.
I was just saying, I often use that scripture with evolutionists.
Yeah. So isn't it crazy that in 1 Timothy 6:20 it says, falsely called knowledge, falsely called science, and the Muslims insist that this is the knowledge, the science that they follow. Your thoughts? Anything from you, Thaddeus?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, anyone is going to claim that they have knowledge. The question is whether they actually do. And when we probe the Muslim, they quickly run away because they do not have any actual knowledge. All they have is assertions, and they have techniques for arguing, but they don't have any actual evidence for their position.
What is the reason why do you think that there is this big appeal from the Muslim world to appeal to science? They claim that the Quran is scientific. They claim the science of the Hadith.
This is not the science the way we understand science in the West. This is religious science. This is the knowledge, the gnosis, secret spiritual knowledge.
But the word science implies something else. So I hear what you're saying. You're totally right in what you're saying. But they seem to use that word almost to make it suggest that it's irrefutable and very easily proven. By
Trust the science. Trust the science. Men can have babies.
Yes, that's the point I'm trying to get at. So why is that the appeal? Because you used in previous shows, you were talking about using words, and sophistry was a word that you used today. Taqiyya is another word, and misrepresentation is another word. So yes, so if you use science in a religious sense, though the Sharia's understanding of the word may be one context, but the proletariat's understanding is going to be something completely different. But it has an end game agenda to the use of the word. Right,
and also in 1 Timothy, the term here is gnosis. It's the Greek noun for knowledge, okay, but it's best known for its implication within dualistic Gnosticism, where it signifies a secret or esoteric spiritual knowledge or insight into humanity's real nature as being divine, right, leading to the deliverance of the divine spark within humanity from the constraints of earthly existence. I'm not going to get into that now. Katsuna said, are there different levels? Yes, there are multiple different levels. So this is Gnostislam, exactly, it's Gnostislam. So in 1 Timothy, okay, what is falsely called knowledge? So pseudonymously false, bearing a name. So in this case, it's false knowledge. It is the gnosis, okay? So not gnosis in the terms of normal knowledge, but knowledge, intelligence, understanding, okay? Notice also understanding the fiqh, general knowledge of Christian religion, knowledge such as belongs to the more advanced, okay? Now you're looking at these scholars and things lawful and unlawful for Christians, but that's moral law, not civil law. Knowledge and science. So that's within Strong's, right? What we see. But then you get to knowledge, intelligence, understanding. So the same ideas. And I'll stop here on this slide. Taqlid. Okay, so this knowledge, so ijtihad, literally, okay, effort, right? In law, it's the use of individual reasoning or exerting oneself to form an opinion in a case or as a rule, or as to a rule of law. So using reasoning to try to derive something from a concept, achieved by applying analogy to the Quran and the custom of the Prophet. The opposite is called taqlid, the unquestioning acceptance of the doctrines of established schools and authorities. Lay Muslims practice taqlid. Only scholars do ijtihad. Unquestioning acceptance of the doctrines. Thoughts, guys?
Yeah, that would definitely hive mentality then, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And we also see the same thing that we've seen several times, is the one standard for the scholars, another standard for everyone else.
Yes. So taqlid is imitation. You've got other terms as well. Okay, there's you can think that, I mean, there's never just one meaning, right? There's usually two or three or more. In law, it is the unquestioning acceptance of the doctrines of established schools. Okay, a person who is bound to practice taqlid is called a muqallid. In theology, it is imitation of the Prophet, of his companions, and their pious successors. So the idea of imitating the Prophet has a name. It is taqlid, and one who practices is called a muqallid. Now, technically, you are all muqallids because you are supposed to follow the Prophet. You are all muqallids. When you were in heaven, as souls before you were born 100,000 years ago, your soul worshipped Muhammad for 100,000 years. You danced around and praised and worshipped Muhammad for 100,000 years. That's what you and the angels and all the hosts of heaven did according to the Islamic scriptures.
Will you be doing a show on that, about the consciousness of the human being state in heaven before they came to earth and the light of Muhammad?
Yeah, I've done that before on Adam Seeker's channel. I've mentioned it here and there, but yeah, we can do something on that. I need to dig more into that. So, guys, we should wind down here. Okay, so yeah, I'll pause here. Any comments from you guys? I'll open the floor to you guys for the last comment, and then we shut it down.
Well, just on what you were saying there, totally no shirk in that. Muhammad's not a god at all.
No.
There's nothing unusual about people worshiping a prophet for 100,000 years before being born, and being born with his permission and through his light. That's all just pure monotheism there.
Yeah. Do Jews kill people when you insult Moses?
I do not believe so. Yeah,
well, seems Mo is a lot more important than Moses, right? Not just a prophet, maybe. Thunderous, from you?
No, I've got to say it's been an education this evening. Listen to the material that you've presented, and as always, you come out with something that is new to myself. I'm learning it for the first time, so very much appreciated, and obviously having the company of Mr. T as well.
Yeah. So, guys, Thunderous and I, we want to do a show. We'll try and plan for it during the week. Is that okay with you, Thunderous? This week, sometime?
Absolutely. Just to remind you, we're going to be discussing the origins of Islam that have their roots with the actions of Khadija, aren't we?
Yeah, so we'll definitely do that. So yeah, I look forward to that. So we'll make a plan, guys, Wednesday or Thursday-ish, somewhere around there. I'll check my calendar, so I'll put it up. And thanks for joining us again, guys. I appreciate the feedback, the commentary. And so we should call it a night. Wow, 80 people. Fantastic. Thank you, guys, for the support. Good to see you all. And guys, in an hour, Thaddeus is having a show on his channel, Reasoned Answers. It's linked in the name, right, of this show. And so now he's with Ask Truth Apologetics. They're going to do a knockout show called Finding No Mo, which is awesome. Okay, so I may well be busy. I may be working then. But if not, I'll be in the chat. Take care, guys. See you all soon. Thank you all for being here. Bye-bye.
God bless.